In this presentation, I will synthesize what we know about traditional suite of urban soil health indicators and share some ideas that I found in literature that some of you, especially younger junior researchers, students, may be looking into in their research work. So why urban soils and what are the urban soils? These soils are soils within cities, and they have very unique properties that differentiate them from soils in rural or agricultural areas. Urban soils are very unique because they are heterogeneous and complex. They are typically impacted by human activities. One of the most unique properties about urban soils is the presence of human-altered and human-transported materials. It can be bricks, cement, artifacts, construction debris. We often see the absence of top horizons or altered horizons in urban environments and a lot of fill material. It can be gravel, coal ash, slag from past industrial uses, or broken glass. And what you might not know yet, but there was a new proposal to create a 13th order Artesol that is specifically for soils significantly modified by human activities. And they will emphasize the need for very unique management approaches specifically for urban soils. So what services urban soils provide? Of course, the infrastructure support. Everywhere we go in the city, in San Antonio, we see it's a concrete, it's asphalt, and we barely see soil underneath it, but it's there. It supports our stormwater management. It still does nutrients recycling whenever we have more open spaces, of course. It's a food production and plant growth. It improves biodiversity in environments. Of course, it sequesters carbon. And in older cities, we may find really fascinating archaeological artifacts. And for humans, it's also an area for relaxation. Green spaces can provide cultural values as well as education and research opportunities. But these services comes with some concerns, and some of them were indicated in previous lectures, previous talks today. So it's compaction, chemical contaminants, organic matter depletion, and soil sealing. The compaction is caused in urban environments by construction, by foot traffic, machinery, especially if it's on a wet day. It overall reduces pore space, inhibits the growth of roots and plants. It makes water infiltration inhibited as well, and as a result, microbial activities will be depleted. This will lead to more runoff and potentially relocation or translocation of contaminants in different environments. What kind of contaminants do we find? You're probably familiar with lots of trace elements, heavy metals that we find in urban environments, petrochemicals, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. Now we can also find PFAS. I will touch base a little bit about it. And all of these elements are coming from industrial sites, high traffic areas, former lead paint or gasoline accumulation. So it's most of it's legacy contamination. Even if we don't put it out there in the atmosphere now, it's there because we were so active during 20th century. Construction is a big cause for organic matter depletion in urban spaces when top layers are excavated to build new foundations, or even for like landscape purposes when a new house is built. So we might notice really subsoil becoming a topsoil, while in other areas like in green spaces we might see hotspots of organic matter, which can show us really good examples what it can be and offering some models for restoration. And soil sealing, concrete, asphalt, it covers a lot of urban spaces. Soil sealing becomes a really big issue. In some European countries now they propose models for de-sealing, and they actually take away the pavement in the parking lots and cover it with something more permeable materials, and So there is a really move towards de-sealing of our environment, and it sounds very promising because in case of de-sealing, we can decrease urban heat effect, increase biodiversity, water infiltration, and we'll have more positive services to the ecosystem. I will give you a little bit of overview of the existing urban soil health indicators, most you will be familiar with, and then I will share some ideas that I found in the literature. The goal of indicators is to establish a certain baseline for urban soil health, and to guide remediation efforts, and of course monitor changes over time. We do it for urban agriculture to produce healthy, nutritious food, for green infrastructure to promote favorable stormwater management, high biodiversity. For recreational areas, we want to have safe spaces for kids to play, but also to have resilient landscapes. These indicators are typically divided into physical indicators like soil structure, stability, aggregates, chemical indicators, nutrient availability, contaminants, biological indicators related to microorganisms, biological activity in soil. So specifically for physical indicators, so we discussed a little bit about compaction, but this compaction is also related to soil structure and aggregation. If we don't take care of our soil properly, if we mismanage it and bad compaction happens, it can cause the reduction of soil aggregates. Or if it's the opposite, it's constantly soils are being managed and tilled, then it destroys their aggregates, and it will cause to bad water infiltration. Root penetration the roots may have hard time to penetrate through the soil, and overall it may cause some erosion. So these physical properties are linked a lot with hydrological properties, because eventually it's all about water movement in the soil all over the surface, and in cities the stormwater management is a big issue. That's why we have a lot of green spaces, green infrastructure objects. Some cities are doing better jobs than others, but it's really important to consider the physical indicators in order for us to build resilient cityscapes. In terms of chemical indicators, of course, it's contaminants. They may pose health risks, especially if we are engaged with soils like in gardening. Children are more susceptible, more vulnerable to these contaminants, so really need to understand what we have, where they are, and propose remediation techniques that are low cost but yet effective. Organic matter is really important because it provides food for microbes, it improves water retention, helps with carbon storage, sequestration, overall helps with stability of soil aggregates and soil. pH in urban environments, it's about 6 to 7.5, but it can go up and down with some extreme activities that humans might do if there is any spills, or maybe it's a concrete. In this case, the pH will go up. So our human activities may really affect pH levels, which is the very basic property that really plants need to thrive. In nutrients, we need to study nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium, zinc, copper, and so on, to understand what levels we have and how we can propose the best management practices for fertilization and amendment application, again, for more resilient spaces. Biological activities include microbes activity and diversity of microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. Macroorganisms and microorganisms play a big role in nutrient cycling because they break down organic matter, release nutrients that are important for all the cycles and plant growth overall, and even pest control. So, and of course, many scientists study root health and vegetation growth, and healthy roots, even by looking at it, can tell us a lot about the conditions of the soil. So what are some ideas for increasing the number of indicators in the traditional suite of indicators we just mentioned. What else? I think we should be studying more broadly. And one of them is actually it's related to my dissertation, heavy metals bioaccessibility. We in most cases study total concentrations of metals in soil because we have tools. X-ray fluorescence is one of the greatest portable tools that we use to study very quickly. But at the same time, with lots of researchers, including myself, have found that bioaccessibility of metals like lead does not always correlate. In my case, you see the graph did not correlate at all with the total lead. And in some cases, some research, you might find correlation. In some areas, you do not find correlation. It's all about the source of lead and the mineral form of that lead. If it's present in lead phosphates or it binds with organic matter, it may show you high concentrations of lead, but it's not going to be bioaccessible or bioavailable to humans. So it's there, but potential for toxic effect is minimal. So it's really important for us to understand the form of metals to really have an assessment of potential human exposure. PFAS. Any one of you heard about PFAS? Yes, you're all nodding. So PFAS became really huge concern. There are well-established methods how to study PFAS in water. New methods are coming out how to study it in soil. So we really need to understand what's in urban soils, especially in urban environments close to industrial sites or firefighting trainings or airports where PFAS is mostly prevalent. We need to understand it to guide remediation efforts in cities, especially if we want to promote urban agriculture, which is also on the rise. More and more Americans garden in their backyards or in community spaces, but in order for us to have a safe produce, we really need to know what's in our soils. What I found really interesting that long-chain PFAS tend to bind more to soil particles, which reduces their bioavailability, while short-chain PFAS compounds are more mobile in soil and water. It can link to a higher likelihood of uptake by plants. So we really need to understand not just the presence, but also the type of PFAS that we found in soils. Another one is microplastic. We can also add here nanoplastic, right? It's a huge concern, more and more methods coming up, how to study it. We still find controversial results, how it affects soil properties. Some studies even found beneficial impact, but some studies found more negative impact, that it affects aggregate stability, it prevents carbon sequestration and nutrient cycling, and it can even be transported within your food web. So they're really high concerns. We need to study the shape, the content, the form of microplastics and nanoplastic in our spaces, again, to be able to propose the remediation techniques, find the hotspots to prevent redistribution of these particles in a larger scale. So thermal properties. Urban heat island effect or urban heat is a huge problem in urban spaces triggered by climate change, global warming. We see high temperatures that affected plant communities in natural and more urban environments. If we study more intensely the urban heat, if we track it more, we can maybe be able to combat it if we measure soil heat capacity, thermal conductivity, and temperature variation, which will help us to understand what are the best species to plant in the areas that have low moisture concentrations or maybe the bare soils, and plant plants that will be the most suitable for those environments and help us to combat climate change in those environments. So ecosystem services. We mentioned ecosystem services of urban spaces before. It's a really huge variety of really beneficial services that soil provide. But in urban spaces, it becomes quite complicated. There are some challenges I would like to emphasize, but I think there is a potential to still quantify them and put into some kind of index or weighted score to be able to compare different sites to each other. So what are the challenges with ecosystem services? It's complexity and interconnectedness of soil processes. We don't have standardized method to always estimate those services. Soils are so variable, so heterogeneous in urban spaces on a short distance. So even like we need to measure those services spatially and temporally. We very often don't even see those services, so it's really hard to quantify something that's invisible. We need to account for trade-off between different services, because with services we also might have disservices. There is data limitation and challenges in economic evaluation of soils, and how do we scale findings that we have on the plot to landscape level, which is also problematic. But this is something we can work on. So by synthesizing multiple functions like carbon sequestration, water regulation, nutrient cycling, by combining different indicators, organic matter, microbial activity, compaction, we might develop a weighted score that can help us to understand the ecosystem contributions and do comparison studies. Find the areas with low or high ecosystem service potential that can also help us with better urban planning, and prevent areas that are potentially have high concentration, high ecosystem services to be redeveloped. Interesting index I found in the literature. This study was done in Egypt. They developed a soil sustainability index where they use soil degradation rate, soil fertility index, soil quality index, as well as soil resilience rate. But combining it with soil biodiversity index, carbon sequestration, storage capacity, water retention capacity for urban spaces, we can have something more comprehensive, and again use the different index that we can use to evaluate our soils in urban environments and be able to map it to guide decision-making processes. Soil antibiotic resistant genes. More and more studies coming out about around areas, hospitals, on industrial side that's related to antibiotic resistant bacteria. So we really need to study more this issue. Tracking these genes can help us assess soil health, especially in the areas around hospitals, community gardens, where people spend a lot of time. We can do it by using a DNA sequencer or a qPCR to detect the presence of antibiotic-resistant genes in soil samples that we collect. And we can develop stricter regulations, develop regulations, propose mitigation practices, and inform communities about this. What are some opportunities? So a couple slides to kind of wrap it up and see how these different indices can help us drive towards the more resilient landscapes. Urbanization, urban expansion is really, really high. Currently in the world, it's about 55%. In the United States, urbanization is already 83%. So most of people live in cities, but we still don't really understand what's going on in our urban environments. And indicators that are commonly used in agriculture spaces may not work for urban spaces individually or singular, because soils in urban spaces are so complex. So we need to have more comprehensive approach in studying it. Considering that urban expansion is done by cost of taking over agricultural lands and forests, we need to utilize remote sensing ecosystem service indices that can help us identify and prioritize areas, lands with high ecosystem services, high organic matter, high nutrient level, to drive better decisions and perhaps not develop those lands and choose areas with low ecosystem services for our city expansion. Stronger regulation for PFAS. This is a big issue, and more studies, again, coming out, finding them in multiple locations. It's very hard to measure them. There are still remediation techniques that are in process, how we manage them, how we mitigate the impact. Biochar shows a promising effect, but still we need to study more. There are some analytical techniques that have already been used, but governments need to should enact stricter on PFAS regulations, find the alternatives, some PFAS-free products, and data sharing on the PFAS levels across municipalities is really important for our assessments and policy refinements. Again, soil remediation is the solution to many of these issues, and we need to invest more in finding organic amendments that can be beneficial to remediate contaminants, but also can help with sequester more carbon. That's why biochar, biosolids, compost, mulch have lots of functions and services that can help our soils to be more resilient in cities, but at the same time mitigate pollution. Here's a reference of studies that I synthesized in this presentation. If you would like to take a photo of it, feel free to do it. And I like to share research that I do and the lectures that I had in my classes. Some of you are in this class, and I put it on YouTube to help my students to study, and it's available for anyone else. This is something for you to consider, maybe used for your own research groups or share as an idea to make science more available and accessible to other people, but also check out lectures that I had people contributing from the States or even around the world. And related to urban soil health indicators, I recently published the book, Urban Soil Guide. It's 20 lab activities that can be used in classes by instructors, educators, and workshops, or gardeners to figure out what are the soil indicators and their properties. It's more accessible that labs that we will do on a college level. I try to make it more for layperson or in a short workshop to do, so people start learning about the soil and be able to test for those indicators themselves. Thank you very much for your attention.